Hello, everyone. Welcome to all here in the screening room in Radom and to all of you watching online. This is the industry section of Kameralne Lato Festival in Radom, Poland, ScriptMarket.Pro. And today we'll have a first conversation with in our American section. I have to mention that the conversations, the webinars with our American guests, we are able to do them thanks to the support from the Embassy of the United States of America in Warsaw and support from American Corner Radom. The first guest in our American subsection of ScriptMarket.Pro is a fantastic documentary filmmaker, director, and producer, Stanley Nelson. Hello, Stanley.
Hi, how are you?
You can take a sip. Don't worry, no hurry. How are you? Everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. Thank you so much.
The subject of our talk is development of documentary films, especially cooperation between director and producer. You work as a director and as a producer, so you are I think in a unique position to sort of present us both perspectives. And this is my first question would be, I guess, what are, in your opinion, the main challenges from a director and producer point of view in terms of making documentary films? Because we know this is quite different to feature films. When you have everything planned, you have a very tight script usually, and in documentary filmmaking, this is maybe often much more fluent process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I should start out by saying, I've been making documentary films for, over 40 years now, and at the beginning of my career, and when I began documentary filmmaking, the producer and director role was pretty much always the same person. It was not a separate job. As documentary films have kind of gotten bigger, it's now so many documentaries have a separate producer and a separate director. And I think each one of them has their own challenges. I think that the producer is working to keep the film on time and on budget, and sometimes to raise money for the film. And so many times in documentaries, that you can't. It's not scripted, and things change as you go. And so one of the things that, I try to make sure of as a producer is that whoever is putting up the money, understands that line items in the budget, pieces of the budget might change, so that we might spend less on archival footage. We might spend less on shooting, but that money then can go towards editing or somewhere else in the budget. And that's important, I think, to understand from the beginning. And then, one of the hard parts of simply producing is just kind of to, let the director kind of design the artistic pieces of the film, and contribute as a producer, but that the director really should be in charge of the artistry of the film, and that the director is really should as much as possible should focus on the film, and having a separate producer frees the director to not worry so much about money, not worry so much about being on schedule, because the producer isn't worrying about that. Somebody has to worry about those things, and the producer's job.
So when you're a producer, you worry about those things, and when you're a director, you're leaving that to the producer, or you sometimes combine both roles.
Yeah, I mean, it's all fluid. It's not, it's not like I don't know, rocket science, so that it all changes. And it changes in personality, and obviously everybody is kind of involved in different pieces of the film, and it overlaps. But in very general terms, you want the director to kind of be free to worry about his or her vision for the film. Um, but the producer and the director have to share that vision at some point. Early on in the film, they have to agree on the vision for the film.
Mhm. In terms of development of the film, because there is, like you mentioned, there is very often there is no tight script, and it's very fluent process. But how important is it from also the director and producer point of view to have some kind of idea of a structure of the film? With, of course, you have to be aware, I guess, that this structure can change, but you have to you have to have something to begin with, and maybe to present to the people who may or may not finance the film.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's incredibly important. One of the things that I think really helped me in filmmaking was that we made 7 or 8 shows for a show here called American Experience, and it's the main history show on PBS, on public television here. And they required a script, and at first, we were like, oh, Jesus, we have to do this, script. And, oh, God, it's just a bunch of, crap we're going to throw, but it was really, really helpful to have that, and now, if you saw the script for any one of the films that we did and you saw the final film, they would be entirely different, and that was okay. But it was really, really helpful to have a script going in, and I've actually, I've made films where we have no script. And, a lot of times, it's like, painting, the floor, and then you paint yourself into a corner and you can't get out, you turn around and you're like, oh, what did I do? So, it really helps to have as much of a script as you possibly can. But it also really helps to know that once you're in production, you're in editing, that script can be thrown out, and you can go with what you've got, especially in documentary. You go with what's happening. Somebody says something totally different in an interview, and you want to go with that. But that you want to try to be in a position where, as you go, I've made a lot of historical documentaries. So as you're doing the interviews, you get better stuff than you could have ever imagined in the script, right? As you start to get more and more footage in, and pictures in, you're like, oh, I've got better, I got better stuff than I've ever imagined, and go from there. We did a film about People's Temple, and Jim Jones, and the 900 suicides, and we in the script we were going to go down to Guyana, where the People's Temple was based, and where people died. And as we started, and that was in the script, we're going to go down there and we're going to film palm trees and the site, But as we started research, we had so much incredible footage that we didn't need to do any of that. And so, the film changed really drastically from the script.
In your experience, in terms of development and searching for, the completing the budget of the film, and trying to encourage certain people or maybe companies to finance the film, what difficulties did you encounter in trying to persuade people to finance the film? And was this kind of, you said that these people who finance the film have to understand the nature of documentary process, but I guess maybe sometimes it's difficult for them to understand it, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think having a proposal that writes out the story is really important. The drama of the story. Having the assets. Who we're going to interview. Maybe you can do kind of a sizzle reel, sample reel, where you do a couple of interviews. It really just depends. But I think you want to convince people that people are going to watch the film. I mean, I think you have two big challenges that you have in convincing people. One is convincing anybody that it's a great story and that it needs to be told, and that in some ways it's an important story, exciting story, fascinating story, whatever, but it's a story that needs to be told. And two, that you are the person to tell it, and that you have the chops to tell it. And if you can do those two things, you're on your way. And but filmmaking is, even at its cheapest, is an expensive proposition. So people are gonna say no. People have the right to say no, but it's important, for me as a filmmaker, that I'm convinced also that this is a great story, and I have the chops to tell it. And so that if you say no to me, then you're just an idiot. you know, it's not that I'm the problem. It's not that the story is the problem. And I don't curse you out. I don't say anything. I just pack up and go somewhere else. But it's important that you're convinced that it's a good story.
I understand that if you hear no, you don't end the conversation with, well, you're an idiot because it's a great story.
Right. No, I mean, because the huge thing is, I believe, is that that you people you always come around to the same people in one way or the other. They're the same people in the industry. You don't want to curse anybody out, probably. You might have some reasons to do it, but you probably don't. And because that same person that says no, 3 years down the road, they may say yes to another project. I mean, and that happens very, very often. That people say no, and you just continue on. You get the film made somewhere else, and the film goes on to success, and then the person that said no now welcomes you, like your best friend, with open arms. And that's just kind of the nature of the way things work. So my own feeling is that I want to keep all doors open. It never pays to get mad, to curse people out or whatever. You just keep moving. And again, if you're sitting there talking to someone, or you're online and they're answering, then that door is now open. you know and it's open for future projects, and it may be open to the same project. You know what I mean? The project may change, the project may develop. If you're going for funding, you may have a rough cut, or a better sizzle reel that opens the door to the project later on. But I think that one that one quick thing is that you also don't want to bring projects to people until you're ready, because once you've brought it to them, and they say no, it's kind of hard to get back in the door. So you don't want to, and so many times, we work with a lot of filmmakers. We have a documentary lab that we work with, 10 filmmakers or so every year. So many times people want to take their rough cut to Sundance or other, INFA, or some other festival that's not ready, and it's hard to get it back in front of people, because you bring it to them and they're not ready, and Sundance refuses it, or any kind of festival refuses it. It's hard then to a year later to put that in front of them, because then they look at it and say, "Oh, I've seen it already."
Yeah. You just mentioned being ready with the project and not presenting the first draft or rough cut. Um, in development, from your experience, uh, what do you start with, like if, in terms of, you know, the story, the character, the drama? What is your starting point usually, and when do you think the project is sort of at this stage of development that it is ready to, it's a formed idea and you can present it to someone?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that you know, we have to understand that you know, good films and bad films can be made about anything, right? You know, and you know, so it's not the idea. You know, it's not, oh, I got a great idea. You know, I mean, you know, my octopus teacher, the film about an octopus, won Academy Award. You know, so who would have ever thought? You know, so anything, you know, it can be a good idea. It's really the way that it's done, you know. And so, you know, if you know, I do a lot of kind of historical documentaries, and you know, what I kind of look for is, you know, is there footage, you know, are there stills, are there people who live through the story, is there a way to tell the story, and what's going to be interesting about the story and exciting. You know, the bottom line is, you know, that filmmaking is entertainment, you know. And you know, don't quote me on this, because you know, if you say this, it sounds, you know, it sounds crazy, or you know, but you know, I mean, it's an entertainment, you know, no matter what you're doing. I mean, you know, you want to in some way, you know, entertain the audience, and that can be, you know, with an octopus. It can be, you know, we're just making a film about the Attica, you know, prison riot, and you know, it's as different as that. But you know, so it can be about, it's not really the subject. You know, we've all, you know, if you know, as filmmakers, you know, been at parties or at family gatherings, and somebody says, you know, I got a great idea for a film, you know. And it's not like film lack ideas, you know. It's the execution and the creativity with which they're done, and how they're done, that makes films, you know. You know, like The Godfather, you know, is just a gangster movie. You know, how many gangster movies have you know, have been made, you know, since Public Enemy, and how, you know, in all different cultures, and all you know, different languages. But you know, what made that special? So what's going to make your film special? Uh,
And at what stage of development do you consider the idea to be formed enough to present it to someone for financing, or to the festival, or whatever?
so for financing, I mean, it's really early on. I mean, I think that, you know, in some ways, you know, you know, so again, what I look for is, you know, what we can call the assets. You know, what are the assets? You know, so that we're making a film that, you know, we're just finishing on Attica, right? And one of the things that about Attica was that, you know, it was a five, for those who don't know, it was the largest prison rebellion in the history of the United States. You know, like over 1,000 men at Attica prison in upstate New York took it over. But one of the things that they did was that they said, you know, we want the cameras to come in the first day. So what they did was they took over the prison, and they had 38 guards hostage, you know, so that nobody could come in and take back the prison, because they had all these hostages. And so what they said was, we want cameras to come in, because if the cameras come in and see what we're doing, see the negotiations that we're doing, then we're protected. We're going to be kind of protected. So there was tons of incredible footage, because they invited the news cameras in, and so there's just incredible footage, you know, and we knew that going in, and so that we could tell the story. And plus, even though it happened in 1971, its 50th year anniversary this year, so many of the guys were like 20 and 25, that, you know, that they were still alive and well and could tell this story. So, you know, we knew that we had the assets, and we could pitch that, you know. And then actually we got a little bit of money, to do a sample reel, to do a sizzle reel. And then from that we raised the rest of the money. But that was the important thing for us, is that we had a story, we had people who could tell it, we had footage that we could build it around, and so that we could then take it to different people to try to sell the idea.
So
I
the
hope that
important, yeah. So the important thing is to be able to identify and verify those assets, to have something concrete to show to the people who may finance your film.
I mean, if you possibly can, even if it's a film about your old grandfather, who you love, and his memory is fading, because of Alzheimer's or something. Can you film a little bit? Can you show the characters? Can you show the style of what you're trying to do? I think that's really important. I mean, because obviously, films can be, done in so many different ways, in so many different styles. So that, I don't know, if I mean, we talked about the octopus teacher, but I mean, if probably, I would guess that he guy shot some footage. I mean, if he walked into Netflix and said, I want to do a film about an octopus, they'd probably say, get the hell out of here. Like, what are you talking about? But if he had footage of him, diving with that octopus, then maybe they could understand what he's trying to do. But I mean, just anything that you can do to help somebody else understand what you're trying to do. That what story you're trying to tell and how you're trying to tell it. And again, stories can be told in so many different ways. And you just want to let people know that this is the story, and that I'm the person to tell it. Because of what, right?
So I think you mentioned a couple of times something very important, that because what I find, one of the things that really annoy me in documentary filmmaking sometimes, it's the disregard for for the style, and for this sort of the fact that you mentioned, that there are many ways to tell the story, and it's still cinema, it's still a film, it still has to be created, it's still editing, it's still camera work. And this is something that I really find interesting in my favorite documentary films, that of course they tell a sort of real story, but they don't hide the fact that they are films. And
Right.
there is a certain language of cinema, which applies also to the documentary filmmaking. And from what you're saying, I gather that it's also really important to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important. But I mean, also, I think that one of the things that I try to do, because we've done so many historical films, is in some ways, I'm trying to tell the story as artistically as I can, but I'm also trying to kind of get out of the way of the story, so that if you, in some ways, if you don't know anything about film, or you're not interested in film, you're just interested in the story, that the story is told to you, in a entertaining and exciting way. But that, if you wanted to pull the film apart, you would see the cinema involved. So I've always, so that, we did a film a couple of years ago, Miles Davis, Birth of the Cool, which is on Netflix, if people want to watch. And I just felt, I would love to like give a class where I just, slowly go through the film, because we're doing like so much stuff, but in some ways, it's just this, a biography of Miles, and you could just see it that way. But you could also see, how much stuff we're doing to bring it to you in, for want of a better word, kind of an artistic way, and so in some ways we're trying to get out of the way of the story, and in another way we're trying to tell the story as artistically as possible. In in the film we're finishing now, excuse me, Attica. I mean, it's just such an amazing story that we just try to get out of the way, but we're doing a lot, in the telling of the story, to make it cinema.
Mm. In terms of working with the producer as a director or the other way around, uh, did you uh, did you have an experience when where this basic understanding of what documentary filmmaking is and also of what the director's job is and what the producer's job is was sort of put to the test?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a excuse me, couple of situations there, where where I've tried to kind of produce. So I've hired a director to produce and direct, with me to produce and direct. And I've found that for me it works, maybe for someone else to go out and shoot interviews and things like that, but that for me it really breaks down in the edit room. It For me, for I have to be the director in the edit room, and it doesn't work to kind of have two directors. So in a situation with which I won't name, but we had a producer director and I was a producer director, and the other producer director shot a lot of the interviews, because I was doing something else. But then we got into the edit room, and we started, like, the first day we started arguing about the way certain things would go. And I said to the guy, this is not going to work. The only way that it's going to work is, okay, we take it from here, in the editing process, and the process now, from now, that I am the director and you act as the producer. Um, and he didn't want to do that, and he left the project. But for me, it's really hard, to kind of share that directing head, in the edit room.
Mhm. What about the situations that uh, in which you as a director was told by the producer, or maybe you didn't have this kind of situations? Listen, this is a great artistic idea and this is a great idea to tell the story, but we don't have the money to go there to interview that person or to use that kind of this kind of footage and so on.
Yeah, I really haven't been in that
Mm.
situation.
That's good.
Uh, yeah, because I mean, again, I'm kind of the producer director of everything that I do, and then I will hire producers who are more in charge of the kind of logistics, and other things. So a lot of times the producer will be in charge of doing that, the pre-interviews of the subject, and the locations, and the setup of when people show up to the set, when and stuff like that. But the bottom line is, I'm also a producer, and and that person was hired by me, so that really I'm in control of the money and the bottom line.
Yeah, but so maybe you had to sort of adjust your idea to the kind of financial support you had.
Yeah, I think always, the film is a matter of what you can really afford, and what you can't, and sometimes it's drastic. We did a film 20 years ago, maybe, about we wanted to do a film about the African American middle class, and and we wanted and we came up with the idea about doing a film about um, black resorts, different summer resorts that kind of cater to black people all over the country. So Highland Beach in Maryland, American Beach in Florida, Martha's Vineyard, Oak Bluffs in Massachusetts. Different resorts, and why the African American middle class, still kind of, it's clear why they went there, 50 years ago as a safe place and wanted to be together. But now, as the country's opened up, the world has opened up. We could, African Americans can go to France, they can go to Poland for the summer, they can go anywhere, but why do they go to these places? But we couldn't raise all the money, and so then finally we cut it down to just a profile of the community in Martha's Vineyard. And it became a very, very different film. So that was a place where we just couldn't raise the money that we wanted to do it. And so we decided to do it in a different way. But you're constantly making adjustments for the money. But one of the things you want to try to do is just raise enough money, or understand the limits of the money that you're able to raise to make the film that you want to make. So you're not trying to make the history of Christianity, for $100,000. That's not gonna, it's just not, it's just gonna be crap. So you want to try to figure out, like what you can do uh, well with the money that you can raise.
In terms of raising money, there is also an interesting systemic issue for me, and I think universally, that we have a different system of financing the films in Poland and in Europe compared to the United States. I mean, many documentaries in Poland and in Europe have public financing from state institutions. And in the United States, most of the financing, from what I understand, is private money, and there are not a lot of, there is no this kind of complex public system of financing film production. So, do you think that this American system is contributing sort of enough to documentary filmmaking, or maybe you would like to see some kind of state-based system of supporting documentary filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, it is very different. I know a little bit about the system in Europe, just from going to European film festivals and talking to other filmmakers there. It's just totally different. So I mean, you do have PBS, public broadcasting in the United States, that is a funder of films, but public broadcasting it typically, can just fund part of the film. So they have a pot of money and they have to divide it up, among everybody who all filmmakers, in the United States or whatever. And so, usually they'll typically fund, you're lucky if you get, half your budget from them. And then you have to go to other places, other foundations or individuals or others. But the big thing in the United States, so public broadcasting is very different from Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and those places. So when public broadcasting typically gives you money, they then want the rights. They then want the exclusive rights to broadcast it. So you can't go to Hulu or Netflix or Amazon or any of those places. And that more and more, because documentary filmmaking has become kind of a thing in the United States, and I guess a thing in the world. That wealthy individuals are putting money into films, and foundations. So if a foundation is interested, in prison reform, they might put money into a film on Attica. Or if they're interested in immigration, they might put money into a film on immigration. That's the way it usually works in the States. But the big game changer, I think, is the streamers. like Netflix and like Hulu and like Amazon, who put up all the money. They don't want you to raise any more money. They don't want you to go to a foundation, which is the other way to raise money. Ford Foundation or MacArthur. They don't. They want to put up all the money. But then again, they also own the film. They own they own all the rights to the film. But so that's the big game changer. And I think the big game changer probably for European filmmakers is they don't care where films are from. They broadcast all over the world. And so that a huge amount of the content, not so much documentaries at this point, but the content, on let's say Netflix, are in the United States, are foreign films, are for that is huge amount of content, and they just dub everything, and or they put subtitles on it, and people watch it here. They don't care, um, about the country of origin. The big thing is too is that but is that though that they want stuff that appeals to the world. So if stuff is too focused or
Local.
yeah, if it's too local, if it has if you're talking about a something in Poland that like that I have to have 100 years of background for to understand, then it's not that attractive to Netflix or the streamers.
I'm asking about this because I think there. Well, you could say there are you could say there are pluses and the good and the bad sides of both the systems, because the public financing in Europe and in Poland allows for the the more maybe artistic experimental cinema or the documentary films that maybe don't have this potential of generating large revenue to flourish and to be made and to be screened at the festivals and so on. But on the other hand, of course, there are some sometimes very strict criteria, and of course some kind of political issues sometimes play a part. And in the system in the United States, I guess the question is what chances do you have as a filmmaker if your project is interesting from the artistic point of view or storytelling point of view, but still is deemed to be commercially not viable. It won't generate a large commercial revenue. So, what's your opinion about that?
I mean, I think in very general terms, documentaries just don't create large commercial revenues. I mean that's not kind of so. I don't think that could be that should be the real concern in many ways. It's in some ways it's are people gonna watch this film, right? It's just that I mean and you want to make films that people are gonna watch. I think that because um you know, eh, look, if you made an hour film, for $100,000, at least in the States, that would be incredibly cheap, right? But that's still $100,000. It's not, it's a lot of money. And so I think that you just gotta understand that, and I think that I mean there and there's something totally different in art films. If you're an artist and you're gonna just do videos that are gonna go to different festivals, or biennales, and you're gonna make your career that way. That's something totally different, and that's to be respected. And you might be able to make those films, sitting there in your living room on your computer by yourself.
Mm. There is also this interesting thing about specifically your filmmaking. Many of your films are dealing with social justice issues, political issues. Many of the films sort of give voice to the groups that were underrepresented in culture. And how did you ever encounter a problem of financing the film because it dealt with a contentious social issue or contentious political issue, and some kind of private, for example, private investor or foundation said this is too controversial for me?
Not really. I don't think. I mean, so many times, you don't know why people are funding your film, or more importantly, not funding your film. They don't say, "Oh, I'm not going to fund this because it's too controversial." I mean, I think that people want controversy, and that people really want it. We did a film, a few years back about the Black Panther Party, in the United States, and maybe 5 years ago or so, before kind of the advent of the huge Netflix, and we had a little bit of a problem raising money from foundations for that, but if we propose that now, we could get into a bidding war, between Netflix and Hulu and all those people, and they would want to turn it into a 10-part series, you know, because it involves drugs, sex, and rock and roll, and violence, and so and that it's controversial, we did a film that premiered this year on Netflix. So it's on Netflix if you want to watch it, called Crack: Conspiracy, Corruption, and something else. But it's called Crack, and we were talking to Netflix about different projects, and we kind of did like a one-word pitch, we said, how about crack? How about a film about crack? And they're like, yeah, that's a great idea, um, you know, because everybody understood right away, the potential of it, and the controversy of it, and that it could be something, that crack is not only a problem in the United States, it's a problem all over the world, like what happened. So I think in many ways, at least here in the United States, a lot of times controversy, is a good thing. Um, but again, I think that I've gotten a reputation for being able to tell these stories, and to tell these stories honestly, and from a number of different sides, and so that it's not going to be kind of you know uh, slanted in one way, or at least too far, you know. And I like to think about it. I use a term like that we want to at least have the appearance of objectivity. We want to have the illusion of objectivity. Obviously, nothing is objective, and we're not objective, but um, we want to have at least that illusion of objectivity.
Mhm. But I guess you can imagine, because you're talking about controversy being attractive. I guess you can imagine a sort of documentary project that is not deemed controversial. It's still an important issue, but the people who can finance the film, the private companies or Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, they just think that, well, it's not controversial enough, it's not universal enough, and in Europe you have, sometimes maybe many times you have a state financed institutions who can help you make this film. In the US, maybe that could be more difficult.
Um, yeah, I mean, but again, I'll take the example of an octopus. You know what I mean? Like what? But somehow they convince people that they should put money into it, and that it would be a good film. But I also, just to go back a little bit, I think one of the differences in the United States and Europe is that basically the state, as the state of the United States is not putting money into films.
Yeah.
So if I had to go to the Trump government and try to ask them to make a film about the Black Panther Party, or ask them to make a film about Attica, or ask them to make a film about Miles Davis, or ask them to make a film about the civil rights movement, that wouldn't have happened,
Yeah.
right? That would have never happened. But
Well,
I, but
the state, the government doesn't fund the films apart from the Pentagon, which sometimes co-financed the films which presented the U.S. Army in a very positive way.
yeah. So, right. But they're not basically funding them. And PBS, Public Broadcasting in the United States that we mentioned earlier is an independent entity.
Yeah.
You know, in many ways. And yeah, it's kind of too complicated to go into, but it's not controlled day to day by the Trump government or the Biden government. Trump actually tried to zero out public television. Like, okay, we're just not gonna fund it. But they constantly get voted down, partially because PBS put on Sesame Street, and PBS is very much associated with children's education, and so that so that when the Republican governments, when you have a Republican president, they always kind of do away with PBS, try to not fund it, but the individual senators and congressmen can't vote for it because it's such an uproar from people, parents, basically.
Yeah. So when you're making a film about documentary film about Black Panthers or Attica or this or any kind of this social justice issue, civil rights movements, you mentioned about you mentioned the illusion of objectivity, and
Right.
in the development of the film and conceiving the idea, how where are maybe the limits of this objectivity? Did you have a situation when you said, okay, for example, I'm making a film about civil rights movement. I should hear out all the sides, but should I really? Should I really hear, the this is a radical example, but should you hear out Ku Klux Klan? You know what I mean? That maybe sometimes it's not good to show all sides of the story. And is that something you think about, or maybe as a producer, as a director in the development of the film, about this sort of, social justice issues where you are certain that one side is right and the other side is wrong? Because there are issues like that.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know what side the film is on from the very beginning, right? I mean, when we go to PBS or whatever and say we want to do a film about the Freedom Riders or Freedom Summer, which was a summer of getting African Americans registered to vote in the South, they know who the heroes of the film are, right? It's not a film that's like, oh, the the Ku Klux Klan and the
It's
got
not
people
the
who
birth of a nation.
no, it's not. I mean, that's and we know that and they know that going in, and but we do so one of the great things about Freedom Riders, which was really a hugely successful film here, is that we talked to white Southerners about why would you bomb a public bus, because black people and white people were sitting together at the front of the bus. Like, what the hell were you thinking? Like why? We interviewed the governor of Alabama, who basically was just an incredible racist, back then, and basically, went on TV and said that, if these people riding on the buses want to be protected when they come to Alabama, right, then don't come to Alabama, because I'm not going to protect you, right? That's what he said, and I mean, every time we've ever screened the film, people ask about him, because he's incredible in the film. He's just incredible. He also just said, he was also the youngest governor in the history of Alabama. So he was like 32 years old. And so when we interviewed him, I guess in whatever year it was, he was just, in his 70s and still, was able to talk about those incidents in great detail. But I mean, I think it helps the whole film, that we did talk to white Southerners, and but again, look, it's like the illusion, of objectivity. We made the film on the Black Panthers, and one of the things that we wanted to do was to talk to some cops, and I constantly would told the producer, you need to get some cops. You need to get me some cops to talk about, why they had this war against the Black Panthers, and what they saw, in the Black Panthers. We finally interviewed 3 cops in the film, and the film is 2 hours long, so it's like almost 120 minutes, and the 3 cops may make up 5 minutes in the whole film, you know but everybody, when we screen the film, are always, how did you get the cops? Oh, these cops are great. How did you do it? And so that it's kind of the illusion of objectivity. 115 minutes is the Black Panthers talking about the Panthers. 5 minutes is the cops, but it's enough for it to for you to understand what the other side felt.
I guess there is some kind of balance maybe to be struck here. That on the one hand, of course, you want to clearly state, for example, by structuring your film the way you just mentioned, clearly state what side sort of the discussion you are on. But at the same time, I guess there are values in two things. Presenting that these sort of attitudes in society remain and they exist, and also maybe in trying to understand them, because you mentioned the question you asked to the Southerners: why did you do it? So do you in your films and in the development of your films, and maybe of other people's films as a producer, is it really important to you when you look at the project that the people behind it, or you, if you're making it, really try to understand their characters and the issue they're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, one of the things I think that makes these films work is that I truly kind of want to understand. I mean, that I mean, I'm looking people in the eye and like, why? Like why did it mean so much that white people and black people sat together? Like, why? You really want to try to understand, and you want to understand the the even the side that you're kind of agreeing with. So part of the idea of the Black Panther film, and also about Jonestown and People's Temple, part of the main idea for us was, why did people join, right? Why did they stay? Why did they leave, right? And that's something that you know I really want to do. I want to know, and I think that one of the greatest mistakes that people kind of make, when they're doing interviews, is they come with a list of questions, and so like they're looking at the paper thinking about the next question, and not really listening to the answers, and not having a conversation with the people to kind of follow up in the answers. Can you excuse me just for 1 second, because my daughter's leaving.
Okay.
I just want to say,
Okay, don't worry.
sorry.
No
She's
problem. Saying goodbye to your daughter has to be a priority.
Yeah.
So don't worry. Yeah. So the you also this kind of fluidity of the process of filmmaking, documentary filmmaking, also the fact that you have to be flexible, also applies to your way of making the film. For example, what you just talked about, the interviews, and the fact that you really have to be engaged with your characters.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be engaged, and you have to kind of go, where the interview takes you, when you're doing the interview. I mean, I find that in some ways, interviewing people, to be the most stressful part of filmmaking. And if we do 2 or 3 interviews in a day, for a historical documentary, I'm like exhausted, and we go back to the hotel, and the camera person, the sound person, they're like, oh, let's go out to dinner, and I'm like, man, I gotta just order room service. I gotta get the chicken or something, just because I'm just really tired, and because it's kind of concentrating, on 3 different levels. One is just like, the interpersonal level, and two, it's also what's going on in the surroundings, that the light is right, and there's not a truck going by, at an important time, and then it's also trying to be in the edit room, and saying, okay, this is where this statement can start, and this is where it ends, or well, this person said something that's really nice, but the next question is why. And that's one of my favorite questions, in doing an interview, is why. Because people will say, I just, I wanted to join the Black Panthers because they were saying stuff that was so important to me. Why? And just so it's really existing on a bunch of different levels at once, and I think that's just so important. And you're also thinking about the research that you've done, and do the research. And then I think that that once you get into the edit room, it's then readjusting, like you wanted this to work, but it doesn't work, but this other thing really works, and how can we work this thing into the film, so like I've done a lot of films about very serious subjects, and just one of the things that we say is we're going to keep anything funny in the film as long as we possibly can, like anything, just anything that we think is funny, just that's the last, and you might have to cut it because it doesn't fit or whatever, but we try to make it work. We just want things to be funny
And
um
bearable, because I think you were saying about, if I understand you correctly, that the laughter and the funny part and the funny bits and pieces are there, maybe sometimes to make the project and the film more bearable, given the fact that that the story is about really hard
yeah,
issue.
yeah, and I mean, but it's also like life is funny and people are funny, and situations are funny, I mean, one of the best compliments I got, about Black Panthers was a filmmaker that I worked with, a while back, and she's gone on to do her own thing. When she saw Black Panther, she said, Sandy, that's the funniest film you ever made. I mean, she has a weird sense of humor, but she understood, that a lot of it, is our jokes. It's just, and I can't play. You got to see from film Black Panthers is on Amazon Prime, so also look at that. But it's again, understanding, like what you wanted to get and then what you got, and working in the edit room. It's about working with what you've got. The other thing I should say that is really important to me is that, in documentary films, we try when we're writing out the budget and we're actually working is to put as much time into the edit room as we possibly can. And a lot of times it's a matter of, we put as much time, as we possibly can. And then, if we shoot, less and we have money left over from shooting, we add more weeks in the editing. Or if we just do everything, but I mean, look, so a lot of times you understand, the documentary films that we make are just hugely expensive. So Attica, I think they gave me a figure so far. We're up to $237,000 in footage, just in footage, just for the footage, and we're probably, the first estimate we got was like $482,000 for footage, for archival. But and just so you people understand, that's not reasonable. That was like, that can't be, But I think in the budget we had $270,000 just for footage.
A couple of minutes ago, you also mentioned when you were talking about Black Panthers, you mentioned the conversation you had with the producer that you have to get me some cops who fought the Black Panthers. This is, if I understand correctly, this is sort of a glimpse into your practical relationship with the producer. That you have an idea, I have to have cops, please get me some cops. And there is I guess, the role of the producer then in the development and also later to try to get these people to talk. But I guess maybe sometimes it's also your role to sometimes convince them.
Yeah, a lot of times at this point, I'm relying on the producers to kind of, secure the people.
Yeah.
So take that example, I'm like, get the cops, get the cops. But I mean, I worked with some incredible producers. Lorenz Grant was the producer of the Black Panthers, and a woman named Tracy Curry was the producer of Attica. And I mean, Lorenz would just talk to people on the phone for hours, and we would like the rest of the office, like, the editors and me and such. I mean, we would like just kind of listen and be cracking up because she would say, "Oh, hi, how's your dog? Oh, okay. Did he recover? Oh, great. Blah 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 blah." I mean, and she would just talk to them for hours, and they bent to her will. I mean, you got to understand too that anybody that agrees to do an interview, right, with you is doing you a favor, right? They don't have to do it. They're not gonna get any money for it. They're not gonna be at, as when you win your award at Sundance or any festival, they're not gonna be there to get an award, and so they're really doing you a favor. So you really want to try to work with them, and try your best to convince them to do it. But that's one of the ways that the jobs of the producer at this point for me is to secure the interviews, do the pre-interviews, and then they write up kind of what we call an abstract, like just scribble, like the answers that they gave, and then I'll read it, and then kind of go through it, and then we'll both together formulate questions. But that is really a really important step for the producers, to do the pre-interviews, and then to make a decision of who we actually want to film.
So
And the thing, go ahead.
continue,
Uh,
go on.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that part of what I tell the producers is, we start from a pool of people, whoever, but that, everybody that you talk to, you want to try to give you more, and, 3 people or something. So, we start like a few people like this, and then, we get more and more and more and more people like this. And then, then we have to narrow it down because maybe we have like 50 people, and then we narrow it down to the people that we actually shoot, and that's these people here.
Yeah. So interpersonal skills are really important for a producer of documentary films.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, yeah, just getting those people. I mean, look, but people want to talk. People want to tell their story, and like if you look at a lot of documentaries, it's amazing, who people get. People want to tell their story. And you just got to convince them that you're not gonna run away and do something bad with their story. When we did People's Temple, about Jim Jones and People's Temple, we made a decision that we would talk to people who were part of the People's Temple, who a lot of them went through great tragedy because 900 people died, and people, people's relatives and everything, but a few people survived or they weren't there at that moment. And that we would talk to them and tell them what we were doing, but we wouldn't try to convince them to do the interviews. And that's what we did, because we didn't want to get into that situation where we're trying to convince people. We met a couple who were part of People's Temple and got married afterwards, and they had a grown kids, and their kids didn't even know that they were ever had been a part of People's Temple, and they didn't want them to know. And they actually agreed to do a pre-interview with us, and they said they didn't want to do it. And we said, okay, we're not going to try to convince you how it'll be really cathartic for you, how it'll be really great for you to do an interview. We just, if you change your mind, here's my number, you call us. But
Just a quick question to our audience, if there is a question from the audience. You can ask it. You can ask it in Polish. I will translate for Stanley to answer. Just a reminder. If there are no questions from the audience right now, then you mentioned pre-interviews, and when it comes to development of the film, of the documentary film, do you always do pre-interviews? How important are them? Because you mentioned they help you with to formulate questions, and I suppose sort of get a sense of what a certain person is like. And what other rehearsals or preparations do you always do in the process of development of the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to do as much pre-interviews as you possibly can, but again, everything is fluid. I've done pre-interviews, where I ask people 3 questions, and I'm like, okay, fine. Like, especially when you're doing older people, because sometimes older people will be like, well, I tell you that already. It's like, yeah, but the camera wasn't there when and a lot of times people have a bit of a problem, if they're not kind of used to telling a story over again. So, you just kind of have that, but also, you can learn a lot, in pre-interviews. And you want to jot down, like their answers, they're good answers, so you have some of that. Um, and a lot of times, you can go back, and get people to repeat stuff. So that, when we did a film called The Murder of Emmett Till, which was about a murder in Mississippi in 1955, very important to the civil rights movement. We interviewed his cousin, who was in the house. 2 men came into the shack in Mississippi and took Emmett Till and kidnapped him and murdered him. And when when I first talked to his cousin who was in the house, they were young boys. He said, I said to him, what was it like that night? And he said, it was dark as 1,000 midnights. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And I just thought that was just an incredible statement, dark as a thousand midnights. So I wrote that, down, and, just talking to him. And so then we went back to the interview. One of the things I wanted from him was him to say that again, on film, right? And that, I had written it out. So, I said to him, Wheeler, what was it like that night? And he was like, oh, it was dark. It was real dark. And I was like, you know, it's not what, and I said, well, Wheeler, before, when I asked you, you said you said it was dark as a thousand midnights. Do you mind saying that again? He said, nah, not a problem. So I said, Wheeler, how dark it was, what was it like that night? And he said, it was dark as a thousand midnights. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face, blah, 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 and went on. And that's how the film starts, that with Wheeler saying it was dark as a thousand midnights. But I only knew that because I had jotted it down, right? And where I was actually filming the interview, it might have been 6 months later, and I would have never remembered it, unless I had taken it down in my notes. So those things are just really, important. If you get one or two of them, out of, and it's not like, a good film, it's like a couple of great pieces strung together, and that became one of them.
We'll be slowly coming to an end, but before we go, just want to repeat the question because I'm really interested in that. Apart from pre-interviews, you as a director or you as a producer in these two roles, what sort of preparation in the development of the documentary film do you always do? It has to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the notes. I think some kind of a script has to be there. I think that if again we do a lot of historical things, is a lot of reading of different material about the piece. But I think it's really important that that we don't, or I don't read too much. I don't have to read every book about the Black Panthers that's ever written. I don't have to read every book about Miles Davis that's ever written. But that I read enough to have a background. Or a lot of times now, frankly, the producer and the associate producer will read books, right? So if I'm going to interview, Wayne Shorter, let's say, who played with Miles Davis, they'll read a bunch of books on Miles Davis and Xerox me the pages where they talk about Wayne Shorter, and produce a packet for me, of just the stuff on Wayne Shorter, and then also, the abstract of pre-interviews of Wayne Shorter, and so now a lot of sometimes you run into stuff like with Wayne Shorter and Herbie Hancock and the jazz musicians where they're like, I am not going to do a pre-interview, like I'll do an interview, but I'm not gonna, and like you just say, okay, fine, because that's all they're gonna do, and and yeah, at the end of the day, we're gonna get Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter and Carlos Santana on film.
Yes. Okay, Stanley, thank you very much for being with us
My
today
pleasure.
and for a great talk. Stanley Nelson, a documentary filmmaker, director, producer, was with us. Have a nice day. I know it's the beginning of the day where you are right now, so have a nice day. Thank you once again, and thank you to the audience. Thank you to the people watching us online, and once again, thank you for the support of the Embassy of the United States of America and American Corner Radom. Thank you for your support. We still have two more webinars with American guests during ScriptMarket.Pro, so I strongly encourage you to be there and to take part in those webinars. Stanley, thank you again very much. Thank you to the audience. Have a nice day and see you next time.